This is macOS Ken.
Another positive note on Apple, another round of OS betas, and another shot at an Oscar. It is Tuesday, the 21st of July, 2026. I'm Ken Ray, and this is news from macOS Ken, brought to you by yours truly and sponsored by Copilot Money. Your money, beautifully organized. Get 2 months free with code macOSKen at copilot.money/macOSKen. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOSKen. Another note weighing in on Apple ahead of next week's Q3 earnings report. Seeking Alpha had BofA analyst Wamsi Mohan reiterating his very positive rating on Apple. Though Apple's report will be about the relatively recent past, most of the note highlighted was about what's ahead. On the recent past part, Mohan and his mates expect Apple to beat consensus in the June quarter. They're looking for Apple to report June Q revenue of $109 billion on earnings per share of $1.89. Those are just slightly ahead of wider street expectations of $108 billion in revenue and earnings per share of $1.87. As for what's ahead, while the iPhone build plans remain extremely robust, including Pro models, Mohan says he and his have incorporated a more conservative outlook overall given the staggered launch of iPhones, as well as higher prices. At staggered launch, by the way, he's looking for Pro, Pro Max, and the iPhone Foldable in September, with the base model iPhones and a new iPhone Air coming next March. Product gross margins may get a bit rocky in the near term. He expects those to drop from 38.6% in the June quarter to 31.4% in the September quarter. They'll then slingshot up to 38.5% in the December quarter as new iPhones launch at higher prices, including the foldable, and Apple sees potential benefit from tariff recovery somewhere in the neighborhood of $3 billion. Mr. Mohan used his note to reiterate his buy rating on Apple's shares. His price target on the shares is $380. Apple is set to release third quarter numbers and fourth quarter guidance in a little over a week. That is scheduled for Thursday, the 30th of July. The march towards the OS future continues. Pieces from Mac Rumors say Apple on Monday seeded the fourth developer betas of iOS and iPadOS 27. They were joined by V27s of macOS Golden Gate, watchOS, tvOS, and visionOS. Hitting in the more immediate, blankOS 26.6 is on the way soon. Other pieces from Mac Rumors say developers got release candidates for that lot on Monday. That was all of them: iOS, iPadOS, macOS, watchOS, tvOS, and visionOS 26.6. While there is not a lot in the way of newness expected for the 26.6 updates, they may be making way for iOS 27. Remember last week when we talked about the public beta for iOS 27? One part mentioned by a reviewer or two was the amount of time it took that beta to index iPhone's contents for the smarter Siri on the way. Not an optimal day one experience, so Apple is starting on that early. A piece from 9 to 5 Mac has release notes saying iOS 26.6 gets a jump on that. According to those, the update includes bug fixes, security updates, and optimizes the Spotlight Index to prepare for iOS 27. It's like when Deep Thought designed the Earth. 2 more release candidates about which to tell you. Remember the impossibly improbable 4th and 5th release candidates for macOS Sonoma 14.8.8 and macOS Sequoia 15.7.8? The suddenly completely plausible and practically inevitable 6 betas of both of those are out to developers. 9 to 5 Mac has Apple saying that they include important security fixes. They were so important, though, wouldn't they be out by now? I'm kidding. I'm sure they are very important, and I really look forward to having them. If Apple ever lets me. So was it Saturday that I said something about a lot of people being boxed out of the smarter Siri coming in blankOS 27? I have been corrected and need to offer a correction. First, I had to go figure out where and when I said what I said. It was during the practically unprecedented Saturday edition of macOS Ken, when I was talking about a note from HSBC analyst Nicholas Cote-Collison. He upped his rating on Apple shares from hold to buy and raised his price target on the shares from a crazy low $260 to $366. That was all on excitement around Apple and AI and the smarter Siri on the way. The part that got called out by listener Doug was this. Barron's had Cote-Collison excited about Apple leveraging its 2.5 billion installed device base with its coming revamped Apple Intelligence. Not that a lot of those devices will be able to use it, I said, but hey, that's just chances for upgrades. It was that not a lot that got Doug. According to him, Apple sells about 250 million phones a year, most at the higher end, he says. So say 150 million 15 series and 200 million of both the 16. I think something might have gotten left out there. All 250 million this year and all of the 18 line means by early next year, some 800 million iPhones and over 100 million Macs and a similar number of iPads puts the number of devices at about 1 billion. Not everyone, but not as you put it, not a lot. Certainly not most, but around 40% feels like a lot. So said Doug. The reply I sent him, I include here. I'll use having been sick for the past week as a partial excuse. Where I keep getting tripped up, though, is the difference between what will require Pro or Pro Max versus regular. Apple Intelligence requires iPhone 15 Pro or Pro Max or later, so 15 and below cannot make the cut. But you're correct. More will make the cut than I implied. That was an error on my part. I keep thinking the smarter Siri will require 12 gigabytes of RAM, but that's not right. It's the more expressive voice and customization that'll require the 12 gigabytes of RAM, which, if memory serves, means 17 Pro and Pro Max. I was still confused on that. I know. I went back to check my notes from the WWDC keynote last month and found Apple SVP of Software Craig Federighi saying that Apple's most powerful on-device AI model and the features it enables, like expressive voices and more advanced dictation, will be coming to Apple's most capable iPhone, iPad, and Mac systems. Those were said to include iPhone Air, iPhone 17 Pro and Pro Max, iPad with an M4 processor and later with 12 gigabytes or more in memory, and a Mac with an M3 processor and later with 12 gigabytes or more in memory. Getting back to my response to Doug's email, I wrapped it by saying I would double-check the RAM thing and address his email on Tuesday's show, both of which I have now done. I also thanked him for the correction, and now I remind you that you can correct me too. Or just write to say hey if you want. The address to address is info@macosken.com. More news in a moment, but first a word from today's sponsor, Copilot Money. Your money beautifully organized. Think about how we used to track our spending. Physical checks, physical receipts, physical pay stubs. So much to write down and never lose. Very 20th century. Here in the 21st, there's Copilot Money. Copilot Money lets you keep track of all of your spending, from recurring charges to one-off shopping trips, to that dinner you charged and forgot about. Copilot Money tracks money coming in, money going out, where you stand on financial goals, and how your investments are performing. All of that in one beautiful app for iPhone, iPad, and the Mac, or through their full-featured web experience. And all of it with your privacy in mind. With Copilot Money, there are no ads, no upsells, and your info is never sold. Right now, you can get 2 months free with code macOSKen at copilot.money/macOSKen. Recognized by Apple as a must-have finance app and as a smart way to save money, you can try it for no money with a 2-month free trial with offer code macOSKen at copilot.money/macOSKen. Copilot Money. Your money, beautifully organized. Try 2 months free with offer code macOSKen at copilot.money/macOSKen. Hey, can I ask a question that borders on a trivia question? How much more soccer can there be to put in the Apple Sports app? Also, why not just go ahead and add it all now? Feels like Apple updates the application every other week, and almost every time it is adding new soccer leagues. This week's update is no exception. Mac Rumors ran a piece Monday that had Apple boosting its sports app to version 4.2. That adds the ability to see formations across most soccer leagues, according to the report. It also added support for 7 new leagues, including Belgian Pro League and Belgium, Superliga in Denmark, Eredivisie in the Netherlands, J1 League in Japan, Ekstraklasa in Poland, Scottish Premiership in Scotland, and Swiss Super League in Switzerland. Made specifically for iPhone, the Apple Sports app is free. The latest version is available now in the App Store. If YouTube's picture-in-picture on iPhone isn't working for you, you're not the only one. The Next Web ran a piece Monday that had the feature fritzing for both Android and iOS. When the app is exited, the report says affected users are treated to audio that continues playing in the background, but the floating video overlay does not appear. Complaints indicate that it's mostly an iPhone thing, though the problem is said to be hitting the Droids as well. Google says it is aware and is actively investigating the issue. Remember when I told you yesterday about that Apple store in Ann Arbor, Michigan, moving from one part of its mall to another? Mac Rumor says the same thing's happening to 3 other Apple stores this month. Actually, one already happened. According to the piece, Apple Queens Center in Elmhurst, New York, moved to a temporary spot last Friday, the 17th of July. It'll be back to its old spot after remodeling. Ridgeland, Mississippi's Apple Renaissance at Colony Park moves to a new part of its shopping center this Friday, the 24th of July. I told you yesterday about Ann Arbor's Apple Briarwood moving on the last day of this month. Well, same goes for Apple The Promenade Shops at Briargate in Colorado Springs. It'll move 6 doors down from its current location, opening its new doors on Friday, the 31st of July. And finally today, Apple may be making another run at an Oscar with its first Oscar-winning director. Apple Insider has details about CODA director Sean Hayter's next film, Being Human. The film is a biopic covering the life of Judy Heumann, who the piece says became known as the mother of the disability rights movement, chiefly because of her activism in the mid-1970s. Aiming to persuade President Carter to enact the Rehabilitation Act of 1973, Heumann led sit-ins that occupied federal buildings, including in Washington, D.C. and New York City. Apple Insider says the film is based on her book, Being Human, an unrepentant memoir of a disability rights activist. The film's set to open the Toronto Film Festival in September. It'll hit theaters on Friday, the 6th of November. Being Human hits Apple TV 1 week later, and that may make Oscar eligibility kind of dicey. To be eligible for consideration, says Apple Insider, the initial 1-week release of Being Human in theaters will have to include one of 6 U.S. metro areas, including the Los Angeles County area, New York, Chicago, the Bay Area, Dallas-Fort Worth, and Atlanta. It will then have to be followed by another week-long run in 10 of the top 50 U.S. markets, no later than 45 days after the initial release. Should be doable, though it's the timing that's strange. You're basically asking people to go pay for a movie they could see for less with a subscription to Apple TV. Hey, wait a second. Anyway, Sean Hayter has a new movie hitting theaters and Apple TV this fall. macOS Ken, brought to you by me and sponsored by Copilot Money. Get 2 months free with code macOS Ken at copilot.money/macOS Ken. This show is also supported by people like you, patrons through Patreon. Find out more and add your support at patreon.com/macOS Ken. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media, online at backbeatmedia.com. You can find me on Mastodon, macOS Ken at mastodon.social. You can also send me an email, info@macosken.com. Until next time, that is news from macOS Ken. I'm Ken Ray.
Everyone's a robot.